So this has been a super controversial week in motorsports, and we've got even more stories to cover. First off is the proposed 2019 NASCAR rules package. Now this was reported originally by Matt Weaver in Auto Week, and suffice it to say, if you like the All-Star race this year, you're going to be getting a heck of a lot more of it. Up to 14 events, particularly on the 1.5 mile and 2 mile super speedways that NASCAR utilizes, are going to require the use of restrictor plate engines. The idea is going to be to make the cars drive flat out all the way around the track, group the cars in gigantic packs, and try to create the style of racing that is seen at both Daytona and Talladega twice a year, so 4 times a year in total. Now, you guys are probably well aware of my opinion of pack racing in general, and particularly restrictor plate racing. But to say that this is probably going to backfire on NASCAR, I think, is an understatement. Now, there's no question that the racing hasn't been all that spectacular on the 1.5 mile ovals this year. Now, there are some exceptions. Chicagoland in particular is one that we can point to and say, yeah, that was a pretty good race. But by and large, fans have been fairly unhappy with the product that NASCAR has been putting out. Now, it seemed like it was definitely a much more positive reception towards the All-Star package that was utilized for the All-Star race. And certainly, it was a very compelling, you couldn't take your eyes off it sort of a package for the racing. That being said, I think it was more of a train wreck than it was actually exciting and interesting racing. Now, don't take my word for it. Take the word of Brad Keselowski, who said he suspected if this package were to go through, you'd start seeing some of the bigger names and some of the older drivers in NASCAR start to retire. And that may lead into the story that we had last week, which was talking about Casey Kane and Elliott Sadler retiring. Now, does that 100% factor into the fact that those guys are leaving the sport? Probably not, I would say. But it seems like Brad Keselowski in particular is maybe pointing out that, hey, I might be leaving, or maybe a guy like Kyle Busch might be leaving. And I know people are going to celebrate that, as evidenced by the comments in the Kyle Busch getting punched video. But this is a dangerous thing for NASCAR, and I'm not just talking off the track. On the track, I mean, again, I don't need to say this, I feel like, but I'm going to say it anyway. NASCAR takes 4 major risks a year at Daytona and Talladega. Those races are incredibly dangerous, despite the fact that there is a safety standard that those races have certainly had over the past few years. That being said, there have still been particularly spectator injuries at these races and race tracks. And so the idea of making restrictor plate racing happen at smaller tracks, particularly tracks that are fairly tight like Charlotte Motor Speedway, worries me quite a bit. You look at the angle of the dogleg tri-oval at a track like Charlotte, and it doesn't take a genius to realize if a car gets sideways and gets airborne, or maybe just has an accident like Austin Dillon's happened at 2014 in Daytona, where a car actually gets launched and hits that catch fence the right way. There are a lot of spectators that sit very low in that area. And again, it doesn't take a genius to figure out what may happen with increasing the odds, so to speak, every single lap having the cars grouped together. Now, NASCAR feels that this flat-out pack racing is the solution, or at least a temporary solution, to their current problem, and which is that their track selection is not the best. Now, many people have come out and say, well, we need more short tracks in NASCAR. We need more road courses in NASCAR. We need more interesting track variety in NASCAR. And I think NASCAR realizes this just as much as everybody else does. The unfortunate reality of the situation, and I'm actually going to be doing a full video in depth on this in the near future, is the fact that NASCAR legally is not allowed to look at a track like Iowa Speedway, or maybe try to revitalize Rockingham, or maybe a track like Pikes Peak, and say, hey, we can build some stands here, relatively low cost, we can get an interesting race. They can't go to Road America and the Chase. There's a reason the Charlotte Roval is a thing. There's a reason Loudon was changed to Las Vegas. There are only so many tracks NASCAR has available to them contractually. Now, why is that? Well, the short version of this is that there are two major track companies that run NASCAR. Now, there are a few independents, Pocono, Dover, Indianapolis, to name a few. But SMI and ISC, which is a subsidiary of NASCAR, they aren't technically the same company, but they are the same company. It's very confusing. But there was a lawsuit in 2001 called the FERCO lawsuit. And again, the kind of McDonald's version of this is that Texas Motor Speedway wanted a second date. So one of the members of the SMI board sued NASCAR into forcing essentially a second date for Texas along with a few other tracks. So the schedule was completely redone around 2003, 2004, and many of these new tracks that were built with the idea of NASCAR coming to them, particularly a lot of 1.5 mile ovals. You look at Kentucky, you look at Kansas, you look at Chicagoland. All of these tracks were built very similarly, but again, with the idea of these are the perfect NASCAR tracks. We now know that they are not, but these tracks were lucky enough to be included with one track company or the other, and thus reap the benefits of the TV money. And this is, again, another reason why we talk so greatly about TV ratings and why they matter in NASCAR, is because the TV money, the negotiated money that comes from NBC and Fox, goes a lot of it goes directly to the tracks. So when you talk about attendance in NASCAR, you maybe not are not as worried about that, or the tracks aren't as worried about that, because as long as they've still got the TV money, they're golden. So now we're talking about a NASCAR that is in a really tight spot because their TV ratings are dropping. We know this. This is a fact. Meaning the next time they renegotiate a TV deal, they're going to be in a lot of trouble because they're going to have less money to distribute to these tracks. And at the same time, a lot of these tracks, which maybe are not going to have a whole lot of money to spend anymore because the money is not going to be flowing from NBC Universal or Fox anymore, they are also got the potential that their races are going to get axed because they're too damn boring, which is definitely not the best spot for everybody involved. So I understand, I do understand the thought process that NASCAR has deciding to try to make every track Daytona and Talladega. But I think it's going to be an absolute disaster. I hope nobody gets hurt. I think the best case scenario is that every race is going to be like the 2018 Daytona 500, where it's just going to be a major crash fest every single race. You're going to get some different winners. There's going to be no more big three in NASCAR, but it's certainly going to be carnage. And I just don't know what NASCAR can do. I guess change the cars, bring back the valence or something. I don't know. Let me know. I know this is going to be a big topic of debate down in the comments, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on this because I don't think the current direction where it looks like they're going to head for 2019 is the right one. Heading into a little bit of sports car action, it appeared like the number 8 Toyota of Fernando Alonso, Sebastian Buemi, and Kazuki Nakajima had steamrolled to their third straight FIA WEC victory at Silverstone, and it would have been the 3 wins in the first 3 races of the championship, and it looked like maybe the number 8 Toyota was going to sweep the entire season. Not so fast. Both the number 8 and number 7 Toyotas, which finished first and second in the LMP1 division and overall, were thrown out of the race. Their race was disallowed, and it was almost as if their race never happened. And the third place, Rebellion Racing, Orica Gibson, was handed the victory. It's the first victory overall for a non-hybrid P1 car since 2012. And it's the first victory for a privateer LMP1 car in the history of the FIA WEC. Now, this is it's a really great story for Rebellion. Let's talk about the good things here first. Now, certainly, the EOT, or in English, BOP, the balance of performance between the hybrid Toyotas and the non-hybrid cars like the Rebellion and the BR1 SMP car, which is really built by Dallara, and also the cars like the Bicollis and the Gibson or the Ginetta. are very much at a disadvantage to the Toyotas. So there really hasn't been a lot of balance between those two very different formulas racing in one particular category. Many people have pointed out that Toyota spends ungodly amounts of money on this program and has for the last 6 years. And then that gives them the right to go and absolutely blitz the field at every single WEC race. Now, certainly many racing fans want to see the competition. They want to see at least some form of a battle between more than just two cars from the same team. And so it's pretty cool when a car not named a Toyota wins despite these circumstances. And certainly the Rebellion Racing team has had such commitment to sports car racing in the last 10 years. It's really cool to see them get an overall victory. Now, that being said, Toyota getting thrown out of a WEC race for a skid plate violation. Some people have said this is ticky-tack. Other people have pointed out that Audi lost the race at Silverstone, the same track, of course, 2 years ago for a similar violation. I do appreciate, though, that the FIA has a kind of a zero-tolerance policy towards cars that don't pass tech inspection after the race. If only other series we may have talked about earlier in this video would take that under advisement. Because when you throw a car out for being illegal at the end of the race, no matter if it was intentional or not, you set a precedence, and you set a precedence that we're not going to put up with a team cheating at all. Even if it's unintentional cheating, if you got an advantage that we didn't write in the rules, you're out. And I appreciate that. I think it's a good way of officiating things. Now, certainly, a car not winning the race on track is always a bit of a bummer, but I bet you the people at Rebellion Racing aren't thinking about that right now. And the final quick story is the rumor that Aston Martin may be making its United States return in the Imsa GTE series with a team that may surprise you. It's rumored by Sportscar 365 that Aston Martin has approached Wayne Taylor Racing to field 2 factory Aston Martins in next year's IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. Now, this is very exciting news. Certainly, the GTE category is a fan favorite in the WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, or GTLM, I guess if we're going to Americanize it. The GTLM class has really been fantastic. BMW, Porsche, Corvette, Ford, all taking wins this year, by the way. Very competitive series, and when Ferrari decides to show up with Risi Competizione, that just makes it even better. But the notable exception that hasn't really been around has been Aston Martin, and really it's kind of been a glaring omission as they've been very competitive, they've been in the European competition for a lot of time. Their car has not really been up to snuff at the moment. So if they are coming with a full factory team, that is very exciting news for IMSA and is going to elevate the level of the Pro GT competition even higher, and that's a really good thing. Now, Wayne Taylor Racing being the factory team has some potential implications. Of course, Wayne Taylor currently is a quasi-factory Cadillac team in the prototype division of IMSA. Does that mean that that program might go away next year? Wayne Taylor was selling one of their Dallara Cadillac chassis, particularly the one that run the Rolex in 2017 at the hands, one of the hands of Jeff Gordon. They were selling that chassis, and that immediately put a little bit of a bug in my head saying, whoa, wait a second here. Why are they selling that chassis? So wouldn't they want a spare chassis? And it may look right now like maybe they might be out of the prototype division next year. It might also explain why Juncos was able to get their hands so easily on a Cadillac DPI contract for next year. That car may be moved over to the Juncos stable so that it can be run there. We'll just have to wait and see. The best case scenario is that IMSA just goes up by 2 cars, those being the Aston Martins, and Wayne Taylor runs not only their prototype, but their GT cars. That's not unprecedented in IMSA to run both in prototype and GT. Core Autosport, which runs in the prototype division and has 2 wins overall this year with their Oreca LMP2, also runs the Porsche GTE team. So, yeah, I would like to see all the cars participate in Imsa next year, but the prospect of Aston Martin bolstering the GT ranks is a thumbs up from me. So another edition of This Week in Racing. It's an uninspired name. If you've got a good name for the show, I think I maybe end up doing this all every week. I'm not so sure yet. It just depends on the amount of news and the amount of time I have. But I'm definitely enjoying that, and certainly the views last week talking about Santino Ferrucci, I suspect, was the big clickbait thing on that one, but everybody was really into that. I think it got like 15,000 views, like I said. So thank you guys for watching this one. I hope you do enjoy this, and I'm just going to continue doing this because it seems like people are enjoying kind of having a motorsports hub to just kind of hear some discussion on some interesting points of this week in racing. So thank you guys so much for watching. This has been David Land on YouTube, and we'll see you in the next video.